Believe in Bigfoot, Dogman, any cryptid? Are you skeptical?
Curious about the supernatural, conspiracy theories, the unknown? Then come join us as we explore facts, tall tales, and encounters on Creatures and Curiosities.
Hello and welcome to Creatures and Curiosities. I'm David.
And I'm Jake.
And in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the seductresses of the oceans, about mermaids and sirens and other mythological creatures that fall under the same guise as mermaids.
Which I was surprised how long they've been around and spotted for.
Yeah, so I remember in our Kraken episode, we said this is the oldest. Yeah. And you said, we'll come up with something that was at the beginning of time. Yeah. And this is kind of at the beginning of time.
Pretty much it.
And so I don't know, mermaids, I guess, do fall within the definition of a cryptid. Yeah. And so these are clearly going to beat all of our other cryptids.
Big time.
In their origins. So, we'll kind of get into this, but before we do, how was your week, by the way?
It was good. Been busy with the kids and stuff, and that's why you had to take on the brunt of the research on this, which was probably super fun, but it's been good. I'm just excited. I can't wait for the studio to be done.
Oh, same.
I'm chomping at the bit for that.
We're getting close. Yep, in the painting phase, getting it ready and move all the equipment in there. I've done nothing but basically football. Yeah. Watching football and going to games and whatnot. Really enjoy that. So
the weather's been nice for that too lately.
It's been great.
It's not blistering hot out yet, but
soon to be 20 below.
Yeah. It'll be nice and freezing.
Yeah.
It's always easier to warm up than it is cool off though, so you'll be all right.
Definitely. All right, well, let's get into mermaids. We'll start with, as we normally do, we'll start with a description and then kind of get into the origin of how mermaids came to be.
Yep.
So a mermaid is basically described as an aquatic creature with the head and the upper body of a female human being and the tail of a fish. The male equivalent of the mermaid is typically called a merman, and a male and female collectively are sometimes referred to as merfolk or merpeople. And in some lores, they're said to be beautiful and captivating, while in other lores, they're described as being kind of a frightening creature, something that, when you see it, scares you.
Yeah. I wonder, and maybe it's further in, maybe it's something you found and I didn't notice, but I wonder if that's like, lack of a better term, like an ability they have. Like, are they beautiful to lure you in? And then when you get closer, you realize that they're frightening and horrifying? Or is that just some are and some aren't? Kind of like people. There's some people who are just beautiful and there's some people who are horrifying.
Be my luck, I'd find the ugly mermaid.
Yeah, exactly.
400-pounder or something. But I don't know. I did not see that while doing research on mermaids. But I have seen that some reports of mermaids that they said that they were ghastly. I mean, just like really frightening to look at. You're going to cover sightings and stuff, but one that I don't think you're going to be mentioning is Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, no, I don't have that one down.
So 1492, sail the oceans blue. And what a lot of people don't realize is that he had actually journaled that he saw mermaids.
Yeah. Which I didn't know until you told me before we started recording.
Yeah. And so we're not really going to cover that one because it's not like the most famous of all the legends of mermaid. But he did, in fact, write that he saw them, and he did not write that they were beautiful.
Right.
He wrote that they were hideous and that they had basically the facial features of a man.
Yeah.
Now, maybe he saw a merman.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. But he said that they weren't pretty. And of course, they say that he actually wrote the first account of possibly seeing a manatee. And, we're going to get into that later in the debunking phase and whatnot. But just because they have whiskered faces and stuff, they're saying that that's what he saw. And that's why he describes them as hideous and man-like. But I'm not buying it. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah, we're talking about an expert explorer and adventurer and sailor. they didn't send him just because he was randomly picked. It was because of his ability. So
Right.
it's like there's no way that somebody who's been out to sea many times happened to mistake a 800-pound animal
Yeah.
for
No, I'm not buying it at all. Unless the women of his day were just 800-pound,
maybe they were all
frightening creatures, and he's like, "Oh look, there's another one in the water." But anyway, mermaids have been reported all over the world, and that's kind of the beauty of this. Is Dog Man's in Michigan in certain areas, and the Lizard Man, was in the South Carolinas, and a lot of cryptids are remote to particular regions. Whereas the mermaid, this has been one that's been reported literally worldwide.
Yeah, the ocean.
All over.
Yep.
The seas, the oceans. It's even been reported in lakes, rivers, etc., which they call all these different things, these water spirits. And there's many, many names, and I'm going to get into a couple of them down the road here in the podcast. But because they are all over the world, the lores have different insight on what they are, what they could be, what they do, etc. And so sometimes mermaids are associated with like perilous type events, floods and storms, shipwrecks, drownings out at sea, while other folklore describes them as being benevolent, beneficent. They easily fall in love with human beings. And I did read, and I don't know where people come up with this, but they say that mermaids are believed to actually be mortal, which, I don't know. How do you breathe underwater if you're mortal?
Not buying that one.
Not me. But that they have no soul. And so as we get into some of the legends of mermaids, you'll see where people come up with that. That they're soulless, but they're human-like, etc. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But the Western concept now of mermaids is that they're beautiful and seductive singers, and that the current modern-day mermaid was actually influenced by the sirens of Greek mythology.
Which is interesting because you kind of were telling me about this before. I always thought they were one and the same, but they're actually not.
They were technically separate entities because the siren originally was a half bird, half female. So it had the head of a woman, but it had wings and the body of a bird.
Interesting.
And if you actually study the folklore of the siren, they were nothing but evil. Their sole job was to lure you into the rocks. I read other things that said that they would sing to the sailors, and the sailors would get so excited that they'd bail off the ship and start swimming towards them.
Yeah.
And then, like pelicans or something, it would fly to these guys, grab them by their clothing, and pull them under the water and drown them. And so, you're swimming out thinking you're getting lucky with this beautiful seductress, and she's just calling you in to kill you.
And now you're getting drowned, yeah.
Somehow, some way, over time, and it was likely during the Christian era, the siren changed from being this bird-like female to more of a fish-like female. And so that's why people think that even though they were separate entities, there were sirens and there were mermaids, our Western outlook on what a mermaid is, because the siren changed from this bird-like thing to a fish-like thing, that it must be one and the same, and therefore a mermaid is a siren. Now, I'm not sure I buy that.
Yeah.
I think their stories, they were separate. How we merged them, it was over thousands of years and stuff that we did merge that.
Right.
Because getting into the origin of the mermaid, and like I said, in the beginning when we were talking about the Kraken being first reported in like 1100.
Right.
This well predates that. And so getting into it, the English word mermaid is actually a compound word that was formed from the word mere, which its meaning at the time was sea, and maid, which obviously is just a young woman or a girl. So it was a girl of the sea or a young woman of the sea.
Yeah.
It's believed that the origin of the mermaid actually dates back to the Assyrian civilization in 1000 BC. So, I mean, this predates Christ, for crying out loud, you know. So this has been obviously to this point, and again, we may find something that we research down the road that's even earlier than this, but this is clearly the earliest.
Yeah, because I was for sure the Kraken was going to be one of the, you know, maybe a couple other that were maybe a few hundred years before that, but not over 1,000 years older.
Right. I mean, this we're looking at 3,000-4,000 years that this has been going on, you know.
And that's the other thing too. It's not like these are just stories from 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. These are stories that started that long ago and are still continuing to this day.
Still to this day, because there is present day sightings that you're going to be covering when we get to that point. But so there is this goddess, and there's different pronunciations of her word. I'm going to call her Atargatis, and she was known as the great mother of the gods, and she was the goddess of the moon, fertility, and water. She was worshipped 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, at least, in Assyria, and later all over the Mediterranean region. What I was reading about her is that fish and doves were sacred to her. Doves symbolized love, and fish were the symbol of fertility and bounty. And she had actually given orders back in the day that fish were not to be eaten by anybody because they were sacred. And so it's funny that she became one later. But I mean, she did not want anybody in her time to eat fish.
So that's got to be tough living, because you know that's like back in those days. That's primary source of food right there.
Right.
A couple guys go out in a boat and throw out some big nets and haul in fish, and you're good to go.
Exactly. And then I wasn't going to get into this, but then after her death, they actually built like a temple that they worshipped her in this temple. And the temple itself had a pond that was full of fish. And when you entered the temple, you had to like wade through or swim through all these live fish swimming around you to get to the altar in order to worship her. I guess the women that went through there, because the fish were, you know, brushing up against them and stuff, brought fertility and stuff. So, I mean, you know, these are all different beliefs, of course. But anyway, Atargatis, the story of her and how this all came to be was that she had fallen in love with this mortal shepherd. His name was Hadad. And since she was a goddess and he was mortal, they kind of weren't supposed to be together.
Right, yeah.
You know? But they ended up having a daughter, and her name was Semiramis, and she later became the queen of Assyria. But Atargatis underestimated her powers as a goddess, and though I could not find in the research how it happened, I guess just her being so far supreme to him, you know, superior in the fact that she's a god in that belief and that he's mortal, she accidentally kills him. I don't know if, you know, if it was in the bedroom or
well, he probably starved to death because he couldn't eat any fish.
Yeah,
so he probably just withered away. And she's like, she just told people, you know, I don't know how it happened.
I don't know how it happened, but you know, I wouldn't let him eat birds or fish. Yeah, that's all we had to eat. So, but anyway, she accidentally kills poor old Hadad. And she's so overcome by her own guilt and the anguish of the man that she loved is now dead because she was just too much for him.
Right.
That she decides to kill herself. So she heads on down to the lake and she drowns herself. But because she was so beautiful and a goddess,
right,
the waters kind of refused to completely take her life. So they transform her into a woman with the tail of a fish. And so this story of Atargatis is actually believed to be the very first mermaid legend ever to be told. And the legend traveled with the Phoenicians and the Greeks, and that actually led to the creation of Greek mythology, like Triton.
Right.
And then later influencing the myth of sirens. So over time, this mermaid tale emerges into numerous different cultures as travelers go out and talk about Atargatus and Triton and all these different creatures of the sea. And so now, culturally speaking, there's over 25 different known types of mermaids.
Which I had no idea.
Yes,
I just
exactly.
thought that, like with sirens, I just thought it was another word for mermaids.
Right.
But they have all these subcategories, and
There are so many that we can't even touch on them.
Right.
This would be a 10-hour episode if we were to get into all the different cultural beliefs. I figured I'd throw out a couple examples because I'm sure some people have heard these names before but had no idea what they were. So examples are in German folklore, and Germanic has several.
right.
Okay, and so do the Scottish and Irish. They have several different things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but one of the most famous in the German culture is Lorelei, and I'm going to actually talk about that one in just a little bit. But there's also Selkies, Nereids, which I believe when you were doing research on sightings, you actually are going to talk about Nereids.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there's sirens, undines. Undines were known to live in lakes, and they're like a lack of a better term, like an aquatic fairy or something, which still falls under the mermaid
Exactly.
myth.
Yeah.
There's the Ningyo from the Japanese cultures. And then the one that I started laughing about when I read it is in the Irish culture, they have the banshee.
Yeah.
Right? And so I remember growing up, and my dad would always make the statement, you're screaming like a banshee.
Yep. My grandmother did the same thing.
Yeah. And I thought, what the heck is a banshee? I never knew what that was.
I always thought maybe like a ghost or ghoul type creature, but no.
Yeah.
It's a mermaid type creature.
I always figured it was some tribal culture or something, you know, like the Aborigines or something that they were screaming, running through the, Australian outback or something. I had no idea what a banshee was. And yet it turns out a banshee basically is a faction of a mermaid. And so when they were screaming, they were luring, sailors in to their death.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite quite interesting to get into some of this mermaid stuff. I actually have family members that believe wholeheartedly in mermaids. And I remember talking to her some time ago, and she was like, "Do you believe in mermaids?" And I'm like, I don't know. I never really looked into it.
Right.
But when you do look into it, it's not all that far-fetched.
Especially when you have 4,000 years of documentation talking about it.
Yeah, 4,000 years of cultural belief. And like I said, we could get into this for hours and hours and hours. Right. So you're looking at Greek mythology, Roman mythology, all kinds of different legends of just like these, the male figures like Triton and Poseidon and Neptune. And, they're all gods of the sea, but they're all merman.
Yep.
Is what they are.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't want to get too far off base, but a lot of people believe that people started in the ocean. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Now, see, I don't buy this because I'm of different faith, I guess. I don't believe in all the theory of evolution and that, we were an amoeba and Big Bang Theory and crawled out of the ocean and all that kind of stuff. But people do say that if mankind actually dragged itself out of the ocean, sprouted legs, became people, etc., what would prevent them from still being in the ocean?
Right.
And we were technically born of water, right? Biblically speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in an amniotic fluid, your first 9 months of your life, you're breathing liquids inside your mom. And so is it too far-fetched to believe that there could be something out there that's human-like that can breathe underwater?
It's hard to say that there's not when you have, maybe not, humans, I think, for me personally, is the wrong word to use because I think they look human-like, but it's not part human. That's just my thing. But when you have pretty much since the dawn of people being near water or being able to sail the seas and they have stories about it, it's kind of hard to discredit it.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to say this every episode for people who aren't listening, but if you have, especially over 4,000 years, but if you have 1,000 sightings, which obviously there's way more than that, or accounts, and at least one of them is true,
then it has to
It
be
has to
real.
be true.
Yeah.
And I almost hate saying it at this point because I feel like I'm just beating a dead horse, but I can't help but say it because when you have this much lore and history to go through, how do you not believe that there's something mermaid-esque out in the seas?
There's too many sightings of it.
Right.
And you're going to go over some really good ones.
Yeah. I didn't write
in a
down
little bit.
near
Oh,
the
no.
amount of them, but like you said, we'd be here for hours.
I think we almost bit off more than we could chew
Yeah.
with mermaid legends because they literally are in every culture,
Yep.
not just a few. Just doing research on this has been massively overwhelming.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to touch on how many sightings there are, different regions where the sightings occur, different descriptions of what they are.
Yep.
You know, we can go with the easiest ones, and I know there's going to be a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, well, they missed this or they missed that."
Yeah.
And yeah, we're going to miss a lot.
Just think of every culture who has been near water has a story about them.
They have stories. There's YouTube videos.
Yep.
I mean, this is so vast that there's no way we can cover
Right.
totally about mermaids. So we're just going to hit you with some of the fun ones,
Yep.
right? And so I thought, well, since we can't go over all 25 types of mermaids and how they relate to particular etymologies, mythologies, whatever the belief system is,
Yeah.
let's just go over some of the popular legends. And so I chose 3. There's many. I
Yeah.
could do this for hours.
Yeah.
But the 3 that I think that are probably the most popular, we'll start with Homer's The Odyssey.
Which I love.
Yeah.
I remember being in, I think it was elementary school. And this is back when, in my opinion, teachers were lazy. So when they went to teach you something, they would just roll in a movie and pop in a
Right.
VHS tape. But I remember, and I don't know, it's probably a movie from the 80s, I'm guessing. Maybe it was late 70s. I have no idea. But they had a movie, The Odyssey.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how we learned about it. Because, it stayed pretty close to Homer's accounts.
Right.
Because that's what they were. He was writing
Oh, yeah.
poems and stories, but they were really, for them, they were historical accounts
Right.
for what they believed and thought of at the time. But I love that movie.
Yeah. And you know what? There's a timeline of the Odyssey,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
and the multiple books that took place.
Yeah, what is it, 24 books, I think?
Yeah, something like that.
Ridiculous like
Yeah,
that.
so in book 12 is doing the research on this, there's some discrepancy on this, which I don't know why, because this is factual. This stuff isn't mythology. This was a real person that wrote these poems. But they didn't give a specific, but it appears to be somewhere around 750
Yep,
BC, right?
give or take.
And that this particular book was written. So without getting into the entire story of the Odyssey, because it's too long.
Right.
In book 12, where this relates to mermaids, Odysseus, who is basically the hero of the story, right?
Right.
He's on his journey home after the Trojan War, and he's obviously on a ship,
Yep.
and he has to navigate through the straits between Italy and Sicily. And that particular area was known to be inhabited by sirens. They were in the coastal waters there, and they would sing so beautifully in legend that it would hypnotize the sailors, and they'd steer off course, smashing into the rocks, and the ship sinks, and then sirens pick them off one by one as they're floating in the water. In the story, they also had to avoid a couple of female sea monsters, right?
Yep.
And I never remember how to say these, so if I mess it up, I mess it up. But there's Scylla, who was a 6-headed man-eating female monster. And there was Charybdis. I can't remember how they say that.
It works
name.
for me.
But yeah, she's this ship-swallowing whirlpool that sucks ships down into the abyss.
Yeah.
And so in the story, they knew they had to avoid these 2 monsters, which meant that they had to get closer to the shorelines where the sirens sat on the rocks and started singing to these sailors. And so, going back into the story, there was a goddess by the name of Circe, and she had actually held Odysseus captive for a while, but decided to release him. And she warned him of this trip home. And she told him, you're going to encounter these sea monsters and you're going to encounter sirens. So she gave him beeswax. And she told him, put this in the ears of the sailors so they can't hear the sirens' lovely singing. And so he takes the beeswax, thanks her, goes on his way. So as they are traveling into the straits, he gets the beeswax out, tells all the sailors, put this in your ears so that you can't hear, right? So they all do. But he himself, he wants to hear the lovely songs of the sirens.
See, I'm Odysseus. I'd have to know.
You have to know.
I'd have to know.
And in his mind at the time, it wasn't just about hearing the song. He believed that they had knowledge of the Trojan War and they had foresight of what was to become in the future.
Right.
And so he wanted to hear what they had to say as they were sailing through. But he also knew that their power and their enticement was so great that he himself could steer his ship into danger and kill his entire crew. So he straps himself, ties himself down to the mast so he can't get to the helm of the boat and steer it into danger. So he straps himself in, he hears the songs, he hears what he wants to hear, and just to end the story, the crew sails safely through the strait and avoids their untimely death.
Well, outside of just curiosity, you got to think, if you truly believe that, it's a huge tactical advantage in war. If you think that these things are going to sing to you and give you possible outcomes or information that you could use to your advantage to win,
why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Exactly.
Right.
So it's a pretty smart move to tie yourself down. See, I would probably be stupid enough to be like, I'm not going to do anything to sail the ship, and then I'd probably end up killing us all. But
I know better. I'm going to be fine. I can resist the temptation.
I was thinking when you were reading that, talking about it, do you think that these sirens or mermaids, I'm just going to refer to them as mermaids, and it's going to encompass it all for me, but these mermaids, do you think that they're, of course nobody could really know, but do you think that they're eating the sailors they're taking? Are they just killing them? Are they offering them up to these other goddesses of the sea that, these monsters, so that way they can keep their own peace? What do you think they're doing?
So I've read multiple different things.
Yeah.
Some accounts say that they will eat them. Some say that it's the jealousy that they have, that they want to be us. They want a soul. They want to become human. They know they can't, so they just kill us. There's multiple different lores. Sirens, I haven't read anything other than bad stuff.
Right.
They lure you to your death. That's it, right? Mermaids, there's been accounts of mermaids falling in love with people, which I'm going to touch on in a minute here. But there are many different folklores on that. I think they can eat you. They could probably turn you over because they are, in some folklore, they are like assistants to Triton and to Poseidon and whatnot. Though I've never read that they were like cannibalistic or anything. I think you could jump to that conclusion. I mean, why do they want to kill everybody?
Does the Lore talk about, is it just everybody, or is it people they feel have disrespected the sea?
It's everybody.
Everybody.
Any sailor that's
you're
near
out there, you're done for.
The strait, if you fall for their singing, all they're doing is luring you to your death. And like I said at the beginning, a lot of sailors, there's a lot of accounts of sailors that actually jump off the ship. They're so enticed by these sirens, and it's so beautiful and so alluring that they don't just steer the ship that direction and crash. They bail off the boat, and they start swimming to the rocks. And then these bird-like or fish-like, depending upon, the century that you're listening to the lore, they pick them off like one by one. They grab them and drown them. And so, there's nothing good about a siren.
Which I couldn't imagine, because we were kind of talking about it, doing some of the research, and I brought up seeing some videos of like kayakers out in the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
And we both love fishing, obviously, for those who don't know, but to me, it doesn't make sense to be in a kayak.
Nope.
You see those videos of the orcas hitting people. To me, it's just not safe move.
It's too much.
So I wouldn't do that. I couldn't picture, and obviously, you know, if you're under some kind of hypnotic spell, obviously you don't have control over it, but I couldn't picture jumping off of a ship in the middle of the sea.
Yeah.
Let alone being in a smaller boat in the middle of the sea or a kayak.
Right. I can't imagine it either, but that's the point.
Yeah.
Is you're hypnotized.
Yeah.
You're no longer in your right mind.
You had no control.
You have
You're
no
done
control, so they can't wait to get over to them. And then that's it. That's their untimely death, you know. Kind of sick.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I had done last year Alaskan cruise.
Right.
And one of it's a paid thing, you know, but one of your excursions was to hop in a kayak and go out and float with the orcas. And I thought, yeah, I want to pay $600 to go get killed.
Yeah.
I thought that was ridiculous.
The most prolific hunter of the sea. Let me go swim around those guys. Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, no thank you. All right, so getting into our next famous legend. This one's a kind of a quickie. Actually, the next two are quickie, but I think that everybody knows these. The legend of Lorelei, which I always think of the Styx song. You know?
Right.
It's a German legend. And there was this beautiful maiden named Lorelei. She was extremely distraught over a faithless lover who had betrayed her. Instead of killing him, which is, you know, the more appropriate thing to do, she decides to kill herself.
Yeah.
And so she throws herself into the Rhine River, at which time she is transformed into a siren. She would then, and kind of this is where, you know, the German legend comes, she then, because of her, I guess probably hatred now towards mankind, she then sings to the fishermen to lure them to their death on the rocks. And that's the end of the legend.
Yeah.
Just a woman that was cheated on by her lover. She now hates men.
So she decides to kill every
Kills
single
herself,
one she comes across.
and that's it. Yeah. So if you're a guy, you're dead. You know, if you're passing through her area. Lorelei is also the name of this 132 meter high slate rock that sits on the right bank of the Rhine River near St. Gurshausen, Germany. And the rock is well known in the area for producing this echoing sound, which, you know, gives you the legend of the siren singing over there on the rock and luring you to your death.
Or it's her, and we just write it off as it being the sound.
Right. And that's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
It's her. There's no doubt that it's her.
But everyone wants to rationalize it and go, there's no way.
Yeah,
it's got to be the wind hitting and the waves at the same time. It's
right. Well, people are so quick to dismiss things. And like we said, when you get into sightings, I think there's enough evidence. Although if you were just to type in, are mermaids real? Which I've done.
Right.
I mean, because you ask every question that somebody would want to ask. Right?
Yeah.
The first thing you're going to read is there is no evidence of mermaids' existence. Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
There's a million different verbal accounts, journals from people like Christopher Columbus and people that, you know, we teach historically that were respected sailormen. If those accounts are all out there, there's YouTube videos of mermaids washed up. There's YouTube videos of the singing out at the ocean that people dismiss as whales. Yeah. There's plenty of evidence that they exist.
Well, it's funny because people like to pick and choose. I don't know if it's to make themselves feel better or so they could feel more rational, but they'll say there's no evidence. But like you said, there's written historical documents, but for some reason, those documents aren't good enough. That'd be like if I read the Lewis and Clark journals and I just went through and I was like, yeah, they didn't see a grizzly bear there. That's BS.
Yeah.
No, they did. That's why they wrote about it. You know, like why pick and choose what somebody, and like you said, an experienced sailor, why would you pick and choose what they saw to rationalize it so you don't sound like a nut job to your coworkers? And
I actually don't understand why people would even be fearful, I guess you could say, of mermaids.
Yeah.
You know, Dogman, Bigfoot, I get it. People don't want to believe it's there because it's scary.
Sure, yeah.
You know, if I'm walking near a cornfield, the last thing I want is a 10-foot tall werewolf jumping out and, you know, ripping me to shreds. And so you rationalize in your head that just can't be real.
Right.
A mermaid? Who cares?
Yeah.
And if there's written accounts of it and thousands of testimonials. Why would you not believe it?
Yeah,
I mean, I guess I just don't understand.
exactly.
But people are crazy,
Yep.
and they don't want to believe stuff, and they don't want to believe other people. And
yeah,
it's just easier to write everybody off as a nut.
It's funny to pick and choose
Yeah.
what they want. Anyway.
Yeah, and so my last famous legend was Hans Christian Andersen's 1837 tale of what we all know as The Little Mermaid.
Little Mermaid, yep.
That particular fairy tale that he wrote popularized the notion that a mermaid was longing for a human soul, which goes back to, the original thought that a mermaid was human but soulless. And so when he wrote of The Little Mermaid, she wanted a soul. And then the 1989 adaptation by Disney that everybody loved furthered the tale of a mermaid's love for humans and the desire to become one.
Yeah. I mean, the first guy she comes across in the movie, she falls in love with.
Falls in love with him.
There it is.
Yeah, saves him in the sea, and which goes back to under the description of mermaids.
Right.
There were benevolent mermaids that loved people, and, what's his name? What was the guy's name in The Little Mermaid?
Oh, man.
Prince somebody.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't either.
My wife's going to be listening to this going, how do you not know the
I
name?
know.
You've seen...
I'm gonna get it from all the girls.
Yeah.
But he falls in the water, right, and she saves him.
Yeah.
Many lures believe that mermaids were beneficial to us, and they loved us, and they took care of us, while other lures say, oh, no, they're horrible creatures that lure you to your death. So,
and maybe maybe it's both, like people. There's good people out there and there's bad people out there.
Good ones and bad ones.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Little Gnomes episode.
Yeah. There's
Got your
ones that help
benevolent
you.
ones that love little animals and help them, and then there's the horrific little demonic ones
That's
that
flipping you off while it's eating your koi fish.
yeah, right, exactly. And so the last thing I have here is that, and I just thought this was kind of funny to touch on. I think the cartoon, Disney's Little Mermaid, she's obsessed with like her combs and her mirrors and things of that nature. During the Christian era, mermaids were associated with combs and mirrors because it was considered to be pride or, what's the term?
Like a vanity?
A vanity thing, right. And so they weren't good, right? A mermaid wasn't good. They were so full of being vain and proudful, which, of course, we cheer for that nowadays.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, but without getting into that.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that you'll see, whether it's Starbucks or anything with mermaids, you almost always see that they have like a comb in their hand,
right,
or something, right? And so that kind of adapted into another folklore that records marriages between mermaids and men. They say that if the man can steal a mermaid's cap or belt or her comb or her mirror, he hides the objects from her, and she will live with him in relative bliss until she finds them. And once she finds her items, she returns immediately to the sea.
Yeah.
It's almost like she's captive and doesn't want to be there, but remains faithful and is a good wife to him until she finds her belongings, and then she's gone. And then in some lores, the marriage between mermaid and human lasts as long as certain agreed upon conditions are fulfilled, but ends if those conditions are broken.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of fun, because Little Mermaid sort of dances around that idea of she misses her little aquatic friends and her family. She kind of wants to be back in the ocean. They always show her brushing her hair.
Yep.
She loves mankind and wants to be one, but also misses her life in the ocean and tries to combine them, right?
Yeah.
And so that cartoon actually kind of took all of the folklore they went with the benevolent side of mermaids,
right?
Not the bad side.
Yeah.
But they kind of took everything and tried to roll it into one little story.
Yeah.
And so they actually did a fair job.
Looking back, they kind of did.
Yeah. That's kind of a fun little show anyway. Those are the three most famous legends that I think everybody knows. Homer's The Odyssey, The Lorelei, and The Little Mermaid pretty much touches on biggest legends. And so let's get into sightings, and I'm going to turn that over to you because you did a lot of research on that.
Yeah. In the sightings, again, like you said earlier, there's hundreds and hundreds of sightings since the beginning. You know, we got over 4,000 years of sightings. So I just put 3 big ones that I kind of found interesting personally.
Right.
So I did an older one, and then I have a couple more modern ones in here. But, you know, still, if I missed one, again, there's thousands.
Yeah.
So just Google it, and you could spend days reading. But,
days, believe me.
so the first one I had, this one was really interesting to me, and we'll get into it here. But this guy, and I'm going to read his real name and then what he went by. I'm going to butcher his real name. I apologize, but it's Gaius Plinius Secundus. He went by Pliny the Elder, and he was a Roman author, but he wasn't just an author. This guy was a lawyer, a governor, a military commander, a philosopher, and a historian, and also a scientist. And he was famous around the 1st century AD, and he wrote multiple accounts in what was called natural history. So I had to research that a little bit and it didn't take long, but it was originally written as Historia Naturalis, and that was an encyclopedia of natural science, and that spanned over 37 books or 37 volumes. So in that, he wrote about the Nereids, which I know you touched on earlier. It's just a type of mermaid, and it looks like, you know, the typical woman with rough, scaly, fish-like body, you know, human top, I guess. But he wrote about them, and in his writings, he's quoted as saying they were sitting upon dolphins or other creatures. So it's like they were riding them in the sea when he discovered them or saw them. And he also writes about different accounts of them being found dead on the shore. Pliny also mentions a mermaid spotted off the Gulf of Cadiz, which is the southernmost point of the mainland of Portugal. There's a little body of water that goes in there, and that's the Gulf of Cadiz. And he wrote about a merman that was supposedly in there and sighted multiple times. And what this merman would do is he would actually climb up on ships, and wherever he sat on the ship would start to sink. Oh. And if the sailors didn't get him off the ship, and it doesn't say how they would get him off the ship. I don't know if they just poked at him or what they did, but if they never got him off the ship, the spot he sat in would just continue to go down until the ship sank.
Oh, wow.
But the thing I found interesting about this guy
I'm sorry, what year did you say that
this was? Around the 1st century AD.
Oh,
so this was...
Okay. So we're talking way back on this one. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, his writings, that Historia Naturalis, or the Natural History Encyclopedia books that he wrote, that is still used as the editorial model for encyclopedias today. So what I found interesting about it was that this isn't just a sailor, quote unquote, or some random guy that you could write off as like, oh, he's got scurvy, he's a drunk. Well, you know, whatever people try to write off. This guy was a well-known scientist who wrote encyclopedias that are still used today. And in those, he talked about mermaids. So that's why I threw that sighting in there, because...
Yeah, it's probably a great account.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take this guy's intelligence and, you know, his stature in the community in the day, and the fact that it's still, you know... I mean, I'd actually like to read his account.
Right.
On it, but...
The thing I like about it is the people who try to discredit and write everything off as, oh, you know, you probably just saw a dolphin, or you probably just saw a manatee. You didn't see what you thought you saw. It's misidentification. Well, this is a guy who, that's what he did. He went out and identified animals and plants and birds and fish. And
he's literally stating that these were riding those very animals that people would say,
exactly,
oh, misidentification. That was just a dolphin that you saw, you know? And he's like, no, the mermaid was actually riding on the back of the dolphin.
So that's why I put that one in there, because to me that was a big indicator that you can't just write this stuff off. Right. These are well-known people and credible people who are you know, person who's giving this account. So that was, like I said, that was around 1st century AD. So coming up to more recent times, this one was in January of 2008. And again, I'm going to butcher the names of stuff here. So a small village in Surabrak, which is on the western cape of South Africa. There's the Buffersjags River. and I'm sure there's someone out there who's like, that's not how you pronounce it at all, but bear with me. That's
close enough.
That's
for
what I got
work,
here.
yeah.
So there was a resident of the village. His name was Daniel Cupido. Him and his friends were out by that river around 11:30 p.m., and they heard some sounds, and he's quoted as saying the sound sounded like, quote, someone bashing something on a wall. So him and his friends go down to the river to kind of investigate it. He sees a figure, again quoting, quote, like that of a white woman with long black hair thrashing about in the water, end quote. So when he sees that, he starts wading in the water to go help her. But then he stops because she turns and looks at him, and he says that he noticed a reddish shimmer or a shine in her eye, both her eyes.
Oh, there's those darn red eyes.
And exactly, that's what I thought when I read it. And so that freaked him out, and he stopped. And then he's quoted as saying the creature was, quote, hypnotic, end quote. So here he is, hears this noise, sees this, what looks to be a white lady with black hair thrashing in the water. He goes in to help her. He makes eye contact with her, and then he's essentially feels hypnotized by her. So then he calls over his friend.
So she's clearly luring him out to his death.
That's what it looks
I
like.
mean, that's what's going on here. Okay.
He calls over his buddies, and his friend Martin Olkers gets closer and said what he saw was, again, quote, definitely a female figure in the water. So Martin is quoted as saying she made, quote, the strangest sound, end quote, and he describes it as it being something like a woman crying, but it was strange. It was her crying, but it also didn't sound like her crying.
Yeah, and how many times have we listened to sounds at sea?
Right.
That people are saying these were sirens.
Yeah.
And they're not whales, and they're not dolphins, and they're not normal sea animals making those noises.
And
these are female cries.
It's for sure not with these guys because they're looking at her.
They're looking
and it's
at
in
her.
the river. We're not talking about right in the big ocean. They're not out, 400, 500 yards out to sea where they can, in a big boat. They're wading in the river. So he says that about her. So, he described it as a woman crying. Martin's mom, Dinah, I'm not sure how she says her name. She said that it was so sorrowful, that, quote, my heart could not take it no more, end quote. So she was like almost overcome with emotion of how sad it sounded for this woman to be crying. And then apparently she just dives in the water, gets up, kind of not stands, but gets up, dives in the water, and they don't see her again.
And they didn't see any like fishtail or anything.
It didn't say in the
splash
article.
water.
They weren't quoted as saying anything like that, but they believed that she was by the way she dove and swam away.
Wow.
That she was one of these mermaids, and they have another word for it over there. It's like kainen. I'm not sure how they pronounce it, but
there's so many.
But that just fits along with, to me, some of the lore. You got her out there thrashing about. You got a guy, sees her, thinks, oh, this woman's drowning. I'm going to go out and help her. Turns and looks at him, scares him. Now he's kind of hypnotized by it. Calls his friends over. They said it sounded like her crying. Even the mom was like almost heartbroken over it and wanted to help her. And then she swam away.
Yeah. Clearly a siren or a mermaid.
Calling them out to potentially drag them to their
which
death.
was
But,
what was going to happen, sure.
and it was a small article. It doesn't get into it too much. I don't know what stopped it from continuing to call them, or maybe it realized there were too many people and swam away. I'm not sure, but
Crazy, but clearly a mermaid.
yeah. And then the other one I wrote down, this one I thought was kind of interesting. This happened in 2012 in Zimbabwe. Some government officials had a crew working on a dam that they were putting in, and they said that a mermaid hounded government workers off of the dam site in several different areas and locations. So the Water Resources Minister, Sam Sapipa Nkomo, he told the Senate committee that the chiefs of the area were going to perform some kind of ritual to cleanse the area to get rid of these mermaids. And one of the chiefs was quoted as saying, and the chief's name was Edison Chihoto, and that's of the, and again, I'm going to butcher this name, Mashonaland East, which is just like a little tribe down there, or not tribe, but like a little village down there. But he told media outlets that mermaids exist, and he was quoted as saying, as a custodian of the traditional, I have no doubt, and for anyone to dispute this is also disputing him or herself. So So essentially he's saying,
Yeah.
I know these things are real.
These are mermaids.
And if you're saying they're not, you're just lying to yourself.
Right.
Like, they're clearly real. We see them all the time.
And so did they ever get rid of them?
So they performed their ritual, couldn't get the job done. So what they ended up doing was they hired white out-of-country workers to finish the job. So those guys go out. They come in from a different country. They go out. They come back. They give the same accounts of dealing with these mermaids and refuse to work the job. And the job never got finished.
Wow. Okay.
And so
there's no doubt there's mermaids.
Those are just 3 accounts of thousands, hundreds of thousands of accounts of people. The reason I like these 2 is they were the most descriptive, I thought. And they had the most witnesses at one time. You know, you got a whole group of government workers. You got the head government official going live on TV saying, or to media, I don't know if it was on TV, but 2 media outlets.
Right.
Yeah, no, these guys are out here and we can't get this dam built for the community because mermaids are.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
And then you got the guy and his friends and the friend's mom. I should touch on this also. The mom told the reporter essentially that her children were not drinking either. So because she didn't want them to be written off as drunks.
Right.
That they were out just hanging out, eating, having a good time, and that they saw this.
Tries to lure them to their death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
we have watched many, many, many videos of bodies washed up on shore.
Yep.
Some fake, some hoax.
Some are clearly fake.
Yeah. Like I was laughing the other day when you were like, it's a real one. Yeah, I can see the zipper on the suit.
Yeah.
You know? And so some of them appear to be real. And some were like bones, and some had flesh still on them. Some were hideous.
Yeah.
Some were beautiful. And then you were just showing me just before we went on air of the guy on the ship.
Oh, yeah.
And he's videotaping, but you don't see anything, but you can hear this mermaid or siren saying, "Jump for me."
Yeah.
And then she screams, and it's very eerie.
Yeah.
And I don't know, everybody's going to say these things are all hoaxes. And I say there are way too many to all be hoaxes.
Well, it's one of those things too. I get how whales sound.
Yeah.
They sound melodic and they yell.
It's kind of beautiful, actually.
But they don't speak English.
Nope. Nope.
So
they don't say things like "jump for me."
Yeah. And then the scream after was more human.
Yeah.
It wasn't that whale sound that just sounds like high-pitched squeals.
And I know that we could go out to a lake, blur our video up and, AI something or scream ourselves and then, use a vocalizer to pitch it up to make it sound. I get there's hoaxes.
Right.
I know that there is. But from 1000 BC to present day, multiple accounts. And, we were going to have a little debunking session, and I don't think you can debunk it.
No.
The fact that they say, well, like Christopher Columbus, everything I've read, this was the first journaled account of a manatee. Well, no, that's not what he said he saw.
No, not
he
at all.
saw a hideous mermaid that had a man face on it.
Yeah.
And let's just get into manatees and dugongs. For anybody who doesn't know what a dugong is, it's basically a manatee.
Yeah, essentially.
But, it's a different species, and there's some differences between the two. But let's just get into them for a second. When I was in Florida, in the brackish water where the salt water meets the fresh, manatees hang out there. You can literally walk over to the edge, look down in there, and see them.
Yeah.
These guys go 10 feet long, 800 to 1,200 pounds. Dugongs get up to 13 feet long, 500 to 2,000 pounds. Now, picture yourself as an experienced fisherman.
That's the key. Experienced fisherman. It's not your first day out.
You've been out. You've been doing this for 25 years.
Yep.
Fishing for your community, netting all these fish. You've seen pretty much every variety or species of fish.
You've heard all the screams from the whales.
You've been out there with the whales. You've seen the sharks. Yep. You've seen everything. Do you think that you could somehow mistake a beautiful, bare-chested woman with flowing hair singing a beautiful song to you and luring you out? You think you could mistake that for a 1,200-pound manatee that's got big whiskers on its face?
Exactly.
It looks like a walrus or something?
Yeah.
I mean, for people to say, oh, it was a manatee. Oh, no, it was a dugong. No. It was just a porpoise.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what porpoise have you ever seen? I mean, I've seen a lot of aquatic species, whether it's at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, whether it's actually in the ocean. I mean, just on our Alaskan cruise, or in the Bay of San Francisco.
Yeah.
You go out on the boat heading out to Alcatraz, and the little dolphins or the porpoise are jumping next to your boat. At what point do you look down there and go, "It's a beautiful mermaid"?
Yeah.
I mean,
with
to me,
long raven-like hair.
raven-like hair, bare-chested. Yeah, okay. So a 1,200-pound manatee, you're going to mistake for a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, you got some problems in your life if you really think that a manatee looks like a woman.
Well, then imagine you're that sailor with all that, 25 plus years experience, like you said. And now you go back to tell people about it and they're like, oh, Carl's drunk again.
Yeah.
Like, here we go.
Yeah.
You're just written off as some nut job.
Yeah. We do talk about it in every episode, but this factor of misidentification is ridiculous.
Yep.
I would think, and whether it was a bird-like creature sitting on the rocks of the strait between Italy and Sicily, or whether it was a mermaid in the Rhine River luring your boat into the rocks, I just don't believe you can mistake that for a known aquatic species.
Right.
I just don't believe that that's going to happen.
Yeah. Unless you're that, because back then things were different, unless you're that 14-year-old kid, this is his first time out to sea and you see something and you're like, oh, it was one of those mermaids I heard about, but it wasn't. I understand that.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about your experienced guys who've been doing it their whole life, like Christopher Columbus, they, like I said, they didn't pick a name out of a hat and they're like, all right, Chris, you're up. Yeah. You're going to sail to the new world. No, they're like, hey, let's get our best guy on it.
Yeah, an experienced explorer.
Yeah.
Who's been out to sea a million times, and he's a moron
and now
can't
he's written
figure
off
out
an
the
idiot.
difference between a beautiful woman and a dugong.
1,200-pound dugong with a mustache.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. Mermaids have to be real.
Yep.
Sirens, I think, are probably the same thing as a mermaid. You know. But yeah, there's too many accounts, and we're talking thousands of years. They're not all miss sightings.
Right.
And, they've written a million songs, right, about exploring the seas, and I think of like songs like "Cool Change" and stuff. Little River Band, where they're out to sea, and the albatross and the whale are their friends and stuff. They write those songs because they know.
Right.
You hear a whale singing at midnight with a full moon, and you're out there on the water by yourself. You know what it is.
Yeah.
But when it's yelling, "Jump for me," that's not a whale.
No.
I'm sorry, but it's not a whale. But I believe now, I'm going to say 10 years ago, if you'd have said, I believed in Dogman 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And if you'd have said mermaid, I just dismiss it. It's like, okay, right, whatever. But over the course of the last decade, I've seen enough evidence that I believe they have to be real.
Agreed. Yeah. You can't just dismiss 4,000 years of accounts.
No. And you know
from
what?
credible sources.
Some stories last forever, and they're just that. They're stories. But personal accounts from people that should be trusted, I don't think you can dismiss that.
Right.
So as far as we're concerned, mermaids and sirens are real.
Yep.
I don't believe in, gods of the ocean, Triton and Poseidon, and I don't believe that.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there is some species of something that is a mermaid.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to put that any different. Kind of like you said, are they human? Do they breathe underwater? Do they speak English? I don't know.
Yeah.
That I can't answer. But there's something out there that people are seeing.
And maybe they don't even speak English, but I can't remember the name. Someone will remember it. But I watched a thing not too long ago with David Attenborough narrates every wildlife documentary ever. Yeah. But he was showing a thing about this bird, and I cannot remember the name of it, and I'll try to think of it later. But I watched the video. The bird perfectly mimics the sound of a chainsaw, because like if you heard it, you would just think, oh, it's a chainsaw. It's the bird making the sound. A camera shutter, the click, the aperture opening and closing, it mimics that. It could also mimic people talking. So what's to say that this thing, I'm not saying it's a person with, human intelligence.
Exactly what you're saying.
But who's to say it can't mimic stuff from hearing sailors out to sea, or even not out to sea, just on the shore talking or in a boat fishing, and
right.
They hear people say stuff and they're able to.
Yeah, like a minor bird or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they whistle and they say hello and all the different little things.
Yeah.
And maybe a mermaid can do that. So I don't know, but
they're out there.
They're out there. They are out there, and I think if you hear something singing to you, you steer away from it.
If you can,
you don't go to it. Yeah, you might be hypnotized, and that might be the end of your life. But anyway, you got anything else, Jake?
No, that's it. I'm just still shocked that. I mean, I'm not, obviously, but at the same time, I am still shocked that mermaids are that old.
Yeah,
because when we did the Kraken one, I was like, man, can't see one being much older than this.
Yeah, I was thinking 1800s.
Yeah.
Initially, not 1000 BC.
Yeah.
So, all it takes is a little research to really blow yourself away on the knowledge that people long prior to us had, and the things they saw and the accounts that they gave. It's pretty cool to be able to do the research on these things. But anyway, that's all we got on mermaids. I know it barely scratches the surface of what a mermaid and a siren actually is, and the different lores and the different cultures and the different names. And you could just go on for days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the tip of the iceberg on the mermaids. But in 2 weeks, we are going to be talking about the Fresno night crawlers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're a strange little thing. Not a lot of evidence on it. There's only 2 that I'm aware of, 2 known videos of them.
But hey, maybe when we start diving in deep, we'll find...
You might find a little more. Yeah. That's right. So anyway, stay tuned for that one. And unless you got anything else, I think we'll go ahead and conclude.
Good to go. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the show and you want to help us out, then go ahead and give us a follow, leave us a review, and don't forget to turn on the automatic download button so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And as always, if you've had any experiences, stories, thoughts, comments, or questions, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email to cryptidfanatic@gmail.com. Let us know if you'd like to be on the show or just have your story featured during one of our episodes.